and welcome to Unity of Fredericksburg. I am Reverend Cheryl Fair, and I am pleased to welcome all of you to Unity of Fredericksburg's weekly online gathering. At Unity of Fredericksburg, we are advancing the movement of spiritual awakening and transformation through unity, a positive path for spiritual living. We thank all of you who are watching on YouTube, whether you're watching live or later, and invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you are able to attend live, we encourage you to join us in the Zoom community room for the full Sunday morning experience, including music, prayer, and connection. Our weekly newsletter includes the Sunday service link, and you can subscribe to receive that on our website at uofva.org. And for everyone who is local to Central Virginia, Unity of Fredericksburg offers a variety of fun and enriching in-person gatherings every month. So subscribe to our weekly newsletter, again, at uofva.org for all the details. So the message today is coming from me. So I've already introduced myself. Our broadcast date today, friends, is Sunday, May 31st, 2026, the last day of May. And for our warm up here today, all my little intro, I've got a little bit of interfaith humor to get us started. So from the Christian faith, a Christian man said, "My home church welcomes all denominations," with a wink, but mainly they prefer 10s and 20s. Right? Here's a little Buddhist humor. A Zen student asked his master, "Is it okay to use email?" "Yes," replied the master, "but with no attachments." And here is a little joke based on an Alaskan native Inuit. So an Inuit hunter asked the local missionary priest, "If I do not know about God and sin, would I go to hell?" "No," said the priest, "not if you did not know." "Then why," asked the Inuit earnestly, "did you tell me?" All right, one more. It's another bit of Buddhist humor. It's so easy to go for the Buddhist humor because well, you'll hear it. So have you heard about the Buddhist vacuum cleaner? It has no attachments. So easy to get a joke out of that. So, all right. So enough of that. Now, in the month of May, our focus here at Unity of Fredericksburg has been on being intentional. And in particular, we have been looking at spiritual principles and practices that can help us to make good choices when we move into taking action in our human lives. So, excuse me, our Sunday topics have been based on areas of interest or concern in our congregation. So we started off at the beginning of the month looking at spiritual earth care. So developing spiritual practices to support our love for the earth. And then last week, we were talking about spiritual economics. So again, developing ways to support our intention for the beneficial circulation of good among all people. And today, our topic is spiritual diversity. So, what is spiritual diversity? Well, it's, from my perspective, a phrase that I made up to address one of the things that's very important in our community, which is diversity. So we're going to look at diversity from two different perspectives today. First up, we're going to look at diversity in human, religious, and spiritual paths. And if this is something that we care deeply about, again, what are some ways of looking at that? What are some spiritual practices that we can use to give ourselves a good grounding so that we can take action out in the world? And second, we're going to be looking at diversity in human ways of being, because us humans, we have lots of ways of being, right? And lots of ways that we show up in lots of different cultures. Now, diversity is one of our core values here at Unity of Fredericksburg. In our Zoom service following the broadcast, we always have a bit where we're talking about core values or principles and reminding ourselves. So when we talk about diversity, here's what we say. We believe that all people are created with sacred worth. We promote greater understanding among people in a spirit of unity. So let's lean into that. Let's begin by looking at diversity across spiritual paths and world religions. So, as we know, there are big differences in vocabulary and expression of spiritual and religious beliefs, right? Across languages and cultures, from nature-based indigenous practices to large, established, organized religions. Even within religions, if we think of Christianity, for example, there is a huge variety of how, the rituals and the words used and how it shows up. So, when we honor and value spiritual diversity, we seek to recognize the threads of absolute truth that are present in all faith paths. So, even in religious interpretations that we don't agree with, if we're going to be true to that value of spiritual diversity, we're looking beyond the words and the presentation to the intention behind whatever's going on out front, and the meaning, the intention behind it. So we make an effort to see the truth and honor the intentions behind the expression. So this is a topic that I will always talk about when I'm teaching a unity prayer class, because I always start off that prayer class because there'll be people in class that are for example, nervous about praying out loud. Maybe they want to become a prayer chaplain. They're nervous about doing it right, that kind of thing. And I always start off the class by saying, all prayer is good prayer. Because if we're honoring spiritual diversity, we're honoring the intention behind the prayer, and we're not getting overly hung up about the delivery. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't practice and become better if we're going to be praying in a public setting. And Unity certainly has its styles that people show up in. But that leaning into that all prayer is good prayer, that's a way of showing up, honoring spiritual diversity. That, it's not so much about using this word or that word as the intention behind it. Now, as far as spiritual diversity goes with Unity founders, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, were both known to explore world religions and global spiritual ideas through extensive reading and study, particularly Eastern religions. So I have a couple of quotes from a book here today. Let me get my reading glasses on and get ready. So I want to show you this book here. It's called The Essential Charles Fillmore, and the subtitle is A Guide to Practical Mysticism and Metaphysics. So mostly this book is comprised of quotes from Charles Fillmore. So the credit here, the author credit, is edited with commentary by James Gaither, Reverend Jim Gaither. So let me bring you a quote again about Charles Fillmore. Charles Fillmore, founder of Unity, was universally assimilative in matters of theology and metaphysics. He was interested in knowing about the world's religions and finding the common ground of truth in all religion and science. He also explored ancient esoteric ideas and new fringe religions of his era, including spiritualism. So, um, got one more quote, and it has to do with New Thought. Now, Unity is a part of a denomination called New Thought, which came about at the end of the 1800s. Unity is a part of that. So are lots of other spiritual paths you might be familiar with, Christian Science, many more that I'm not, aren't coming to mind right now. But this is a quote from this book about New Thought. So, New Thought's spirit of freedom of expression is linked to the general New Thought beliefs that knowledge and spirituality are progressively developed, that all have access to God within, and that no human personality can claim to have the only and final version of truth. So, that's kind of the foundation of unity, which is absolutely showing up in spiritual diversity, and it still shows up in unity today. So you can show up at one unity center. If you go in person, those centers might really lean into an interfaith presence, kind of embodying that phrase of many paths, one God, many paths, or one presence, many paths. And there are plenty of folks at Unity of Fredericksburg who have an interest in interfaith. There's been, I think it was 2023, we actually had, that was part of our focus, was looking at interfaith. Also, you show up at other Unity centers that lean into practical Christianity. And the Fillmores, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, they describe their faith often as practical Christianity. And there are plenty of folks at Unity of Fredericksburg who consider themselves to be Christians. So there are lots of words and ways that we describe our paths, and that is an expression of spiritual diversity. So let's look specifically at how unity teachings and beliefs align with this notion of spiritual diversity. So the core of the unity belief system is found in unity's first principle. So here's one version of it. This is a version that that again we use on Sunday mornings here at Unity of Fredericksburg. God, and before I go forward, I just want to say not everyone uses that word, and that's okay. So substitute whatever word works for you. God is everywhere and always present in every circumstance. This divine energy underlies and animates all of existence. So you can hear there that one sentence uses the word God, the next sentence uses the phrase divine energy. So, however it is that language feels comfortable for you, take it, use it, be it, live into it. So that's the first principle. And then the second principle in unity recognizes that divine energy expressing in every single human being. And very often we will call this energy, this individualized energy of the divine expressing at the point of the individual, we call it the Christ or Christ consciousness. It is the I am at the heart of every person. So that's how those basic unity principles align with spiritual diversity. We're not saying that people have to show up this way or say these words or whatever. We're recognizing that divine energy, no matter how it expresses. So if we are being intentional about spiritual diversity, then we practice seeing the truth in all expressions, even the ones we disagree with. If we are being intentional about spiritual diversity, then we are seeing the Christ in every single person, even the ones that we don't like, don't like what they're doing. If we're being intentional about spiritual diversity, we actively seek ways to broaden our understanding and see beyond those outer appearances to the threads of truth underneath. So take a breath, my friends. So let us anchor this intention of practicing spiritual diversity with some affirmation. So I have some affirmations that are based on some of Unity's 12 powers. So we'll be working those today. I'm going to say them twice, and I will encourage you, if you are a note taker, that maybe you just rest and listen right now and go back to the recording later and jot things down, because it'll be a lot of words. So all right, take a breath again. Here we go. I am the power of faith. I trust that divine truth is revealed through infinite paths and patterns. I trust that divine truth is revealed through infinite paths and patterns. I am the power of imagination. I envision a world where every spiritual tradition is valued. I envision a world where every spiritual tradition is valued. I am the power of understanding. I seek the universal truth in all sacred paths. I seek the universal truth in all sacred paths. Okay. So I mentioned we'd be looking at spiritual diversity from two different perspectives. So that was the interfaith perspective. Next, we're looking at, if we are being intentional about spiritual diversity, how does that value, that intention show up in our interactions with other human beings and cultures and organizations? How does it show up in our daily lives? So, just as a side note, one good reminder for us to remember is, from a biological and genetic perspectives, there is only one human race. There are not different races of humans. There's only the human race. And this is a scientific consensus across anthropology, genetics, evolutionary biology. There is one human race. And yet, as we know, human beings and cultures and ethnicities express in glorious diversity. But essentially, we are only one biological race, humans. So, if we are truly to step into the value of spiritual diversity, it's important for us to examine how we are living into that value in our personal lives, how we are participating in the world through activities and choices about, what we buy, where we go, organizations and groups that we participate in. So we're going to look into this with some questions. I like to ask questions. I don't necessarily see my role here to provide you with answers, but to create a space to ask questions and see what is revealed. So again, this is an activity that might take a lot of note taking and things. I encourage you to kind of be present. If you've got paper and pen, you can participate, but we're going to move along since this is Sunday morning and not a workshop. You can always go back and do this activity of questioning that we're going to do more deeply later on. So, on a sheet of paper, at the top, a question. Who are the people in your inner circle? Your inner circle of your life. And if you can, I'd say I'd list as many as 10. Don't go more than that because it becomes overwhelming. So these are people that you really share the important aspects of your life with. So that may be family, maybe friends, colleagues, It doesn't matter how often you see them, because as we know, the people that we really share deeply with, we don't have to see them every day. What matters is the depth of sharing. So this list would be a list of 10 at most of the people that are in your inner circle of your life. So that'll be step 1 of this process. Step 2, another sheet of paper, if you will, and the question at the top: who are the people you admire most? Again, I would suggest as many as 10, don't go over 10. Now, some names might be the same from your first list to this list, right? So they can be family, friends, colleagues, but they could also be people in public life that you don't know directly. Could be people that are living or people that are dead. People from your past, people that are currently in your life. You're looking for people here that are role models, heroes, people you might describe as the very best people that you know. So that's your second list. And again, later on, you can go back and really spend some time with this. For right now, I'm going to move on. I want you to review the names on each one of these lists. How many people on that list, whether it's the first list or the second, you can take time with each, are roughly the same age that you are? And how many people are significantly younger or significantly older? So what you'll be looking for here is diversity in generations, because different generations have different perspectives, right? So kind of see how it is that your lists show up when it comes to diversity of ages or generations. Then take a pass and look at your lists, both of your lists. How many people are the same gender identification as you are? So sometimes we find that we're always hanging around with this kind of people, or we're always hanging around with that kind of people in different arenas. So just look at that. Just look at how your lists show up with that aspect of diversity. Now we want to look at ethnic diversity. So how many people on your lists are the same ethnicity as you are, whatever that is, and how many folks are of a different ethnicity. And again, you're kind of just looking and reflecting based on ethnic diversity in your inner circle and the people you admire the most. And lastly, at least for this activity, you can do this in lots of different ways. How many people on your 2 lists share your similar belief system? So some people like to call this being like-minded, which is a very safe and comfortable place to be, friends. It's very safe and comfortable. Sometimes you want that. You want to be with like-minded folks. But if we are truly living into spiritual diversity, then we also have people in our inner circle or that we admire that challenge us, ask us to stretch and think of things differently. So look at your lists for sharing similar belief system, whether that's religious or cultural or could be regional. Like the reason they're on the list, is that we're from this place. And how many people do you have from outside of whatever that comfort zone is? So these are all ways where you can ask yourself, how are you doing at expressing diversity in your personal life? Identifying areas of your life where there is less diversity. And are there areas of life where you really don't hold that value of diversity? And what could you do to expand those areas where you realize, oh, I say that I value diversity, and yet look at how I'm showing up. This is an activity where you can ask yourself all of those questions. And it really can, if you dive into it, open up a field of possibility for you. Um, and later on in the Zoom room, after our service is over, I will share for you when I went through this activity at a regional conference and what it showed me, because it was surprising, revealing, and very helpful to me. So, to wrap up that activity, here's a quote from Myrtle Fillmore from How to Let God Help You, Unity founder Myrtle Fillmore. All new experiences that try your faith are just opportunities for you to make the good manifest. Best of all, these experiences are the stepping stones upon which you are progressing to more advanced things. They cause you to quicken, awaken, and bring forth into expression more of your innate capabilities that are awaiting your use. So, if we're being intentional about spiritual diversity, we're practicing seeing the truth in all expressions, even the ones we don't agree with. If we're being intentional about spiritual diversity, we are practicing seeing the Christ in all people, even the ones we don't like and who are doing things we don't like. And if we are being intentional about spiritual diversity, we are actively seeking out ways to broaden our understanding. Take a breath and let us anchor all of this with some more affirmations. I am the power of release. I let go of judgment and make space for acceptance and inclusion. I let go of judgment and make space for acceptance and inclusion. I am the power of love. My heart harmonizes with the divine in all people and all paths. My heart harmonizes with the divine in all people and all paths. I am the power of will. I choose to honor diversity as an expression of divine source. I choose to honor diversity as an expression of divine source. So, all of this is reminders of why spiritual diversity matters. So, it expands our understanding. So, we learn from the wisdom of many different traditions. It builds our compassion, recognizing that others' paths are meaningful just as ours are. It supports inclusion, helps us to create communities where all spiritual identities are welcome. It deepens personal growth. Exposure to diverse practices helps enrich our own spiritual life. We're not just kind of staying in our own little circle. And it reflects the reality of our human lives. In our human lives, there is diversity. There are lots of different people and ethnicities and ways of being. So let us be grateful for this value of spiritual diversity as it affirms and aligns with the principle of oneness expressed through many forms. And we're going to move now into our time of meditation. So I invite you now to take a deep breath, settle a little further into your seat. If you wish, you can allow your outer eyes to drift closed. We're going to continue with this practice of affirmations based on the 12 powers. We'll have some time in the silence and then bring ourselves back with more affirmations. So here we go. I am the power of strength. I hold steady to the belief that divine truth expresses in rich diversity. I hold steady to the belief that divine truth expresses in rich diversity. I am the power of wisdom. I know that discernment guides my understanding of diverse spiritual voices. I know that discernment guides my understanding of diverse spiritual voices. I am the power of mastery. I speak with clarity and compassion, affirming unity and spiritual diversity. I speak with clarity and compassion, affirming unity and spiritual diversity. And now let us move into a time in the silence, the stillness together. And as we begin to bring our attention back to the present moment, back to the body in the seat, and the breath in the body, we will close with some more affirmations. I am the power of order. I know that spiritual diversity is an expression of the greater pattern of divine wholeness. I know that spiritual diversity is an expression of the greater pattern of divine wholeness. I am the power of zeal. I celebrate the vibrant variety of people and paths with enthusiasm and reverence. I celebrate the vibrant variety of people and paths with enthusiasm and reverence. I am the power of life. I live fully in the awareness that the divine expresses through every culture, tradition, and spiritual journey. I live fully in the awareness that the divine expresses through every culture, tradition, and spiritual journey. And to close our time together, here's an affirmation for us all to say together. So I'll say it once and then you can repeat it with me, okay? Spiritual diversity brings joy to my life, and I am grateful. Say it with me, friends. Spiritual diversity brings joy to my life, and I am grateful. Thank you so much for being here this morning, my friends, and thank you for watching this weekly broadcast from Unity of Fredericksburg. Visit our website, uofva.org, to learn more about our mission of spiritual awakening and transformation, and support our ministry with your financial donation. Thanks again for watching, and see you again next